I have an important question today, and it is, are preppers crazy and paranoid? And I want to address this question because I think as we get in the preparedness space and start thinking about how to get prepared for emergencies, there is this resistance a little bit of the prepper label. And so I would love today to kind of challenge that idea and that perception and really talk through why I think prepping makes sense and kind of give you some logical and rational explanations for why emergency preparedness is the right choice for you and your family. Let's just be real. Preppers are painted in a negative light in media and things like that. They are the tinfoil hat wearing crazy people who have bunkers in the backyard and who are preparing for the end of the world as we know it, or Tiatuaki, if you have heard that term. If you followed my channel for very long, you probably know I started this prepping journey because of a national security course that I took a little over 5 years ago. Well, I'm back here in DC and I've been here for the last couple of weeks. It's been a great reminder from a national security standpoint of some of the things that could cause tensions in the United States over the next few years. And I want to share those with you today because I think it is really important to set the stage for why prepping makes sense and why being a prepper is not a bad thing and not a label that you should try and avoid. The definition in the dictionary of prepping is just to make yourself ready to deal with someone or something, right? You are just preparing for a situation. You're just getting ready for something that might happen or is going to happen. Prepping is a lot like owning insurance. None of us buy insurance because we want to use it or we want to have, a car wreck or we want something awful to happen to our house. We buy insurance because we know that there are things outside of our control. If you would like to join the tribe of not so crazy preppers, just hit subscribe, hit like so that you are able to tune in to all of my videos as I create content each week. So today what I really want to do is just talk about the 5 things that I think are most likely things that you may be experiencing and reasons that you should start getting prepared. The first one is just natural disasters. So NOAA reported that in 2023, we had 28 significant events. 17 of those were weather and hail events. We had 4 flooding events, 2 tropical cyclones, 2 tornado outbreaks, 1 winter storm cold wave event, 1 wildfire event in Hawaii, and then 1 drought and heat wave event. And so if you start laying those out on a map, and I've included a picture here, what we see is that a lot of the nation was impacted by significant weather events. And I think that is something that we can continue to expect to see over the next few years because we know storms are getting more intense and they are increasing in terms of frequency. The second piece that I think is potentially, possible again is another pandemic. Obviously, when we went through COVID, we saw the challenges that created, from a national standpoint, both from a supply chain issues and then also just from a health perspective. So when we think about preparedness, we want to think about what it looks like if we have to go through another pandemic scenario and how we would prepare our family to get through that. And so that I think is another likely scenario that we could be facing over the next few years. And I think the third thing that we don't give enough credit to or kind of talk about enough is just the fragile nature of our supply chain. So all shipping right now is done in what we call just-in-time shipping. And that means that stores don't have back rooms like they used to have full of goods. They are ordering things based on the consumption that is happening in their local area. And they're relying on the trucking systems and the shipping containers to be able to get to ports and unload it and get across the country. And what we see when there's any kind of disruption, whether that's a labor union dispute or an issue at a port or just kind of supply lines that are unable to compete with demands, we see that sometimes our shelves go empty, right? We saw that during COVID, and that was incredibly concerning. Most Americans don't have a pantry full of food, and they're only able to kind of last for a few days without going to the store and getting groceries. And so when we think about preparedness, one of the things we want to think about is how do we overcome short-term supply disruptions and short-term supply shortages where maybe we don't have all of the things on the shelf that we want to buy all the time. So I think the next, the 4th kind of thing to think about is just the debt and the inflation. And I will say that those are both challenging things. The nation is further in debt than it's ever been before, and our outlay on social programs and the military are pretty extensive. And what we know is that the income that we're taking in from a taxes perspective is not enough to keep up with that rising cost and increase. And so I think over time what that could do is really just drive up prices. It could drive up taxes. There could be an economic impact to how we are going to deal with as a nation with debt and inflation. So at the time of this recording, our national debt was $34 trillion. That's $100,000 per person in the United States, which is a scary number if you are someone who likes to balance your books or make sure that your debt is under control. And what we know is that inflation and debt could continue to be a struggle and something that could impact our ability to really keep our families safe. And then I think the fifth thing that you should just kind of consider from a preparedness standpoint is just the potential for civil unrest, right? We know that anytime there is a significant event, whether that is maybe a legal case outcome or, an election coming up, that where people are frustrated, we have seen over the last few years an increase in the number of civil unrest events. So I think one of the challenges as you step into this idea of becoming a prepper is really defining what it is that you want to be prepared for and thinking through the risk that you're willing to assume on behalf of your family, right? And then thinking through the steps you want to take to overcome whatever challenge you think you might face.